TCC family. Charlie here with your Monday moment. I am going to just give Becky the week off this week because she covered for me a couple weeks ago. But today, what we're going to do is we are going to kind of expand on what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about making disciples at home, yesterday on Father's Day, Sunday. And that command and that awesome opportunity to have this time to make disciples, this time that is just every day, all day pretty much right now, and that command for us as disciples to make more disciples. So that's our mission statement as TCC, is to make disciples who make disciples. If you haven't heard it a million times, I'm going to say it a million more times today. And I just want to reemphasize that and just kind of study a little bit of what we read yesterday and reemphasize these points. But to get started, I think what we need to do is just remind ourselves of what phrasing we as TCC, as Next Gen TCC, are using to describe what it looks like to be a disciple. And we break it down into three simple parts. We break it down into knowing Jesus, it's being transformed by Jesus, and being on mission with Jesus. And so as we become disciples, as we grow as disciples, it is our command and Jesus' mission to see us go and make disciples of the world, to see us make disciples of our kids in our own home, in our own community, and our neighbors, strangers we meet, everyone. That is our mission, is to make disciples. So if you would open up with me, I'm going to read a passage from Deuteronomy 6, and we're going to start in verse 5, and then we're going to go ahead and read until verse 9. So Deuteronomy 6, verse 5 says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." Other translations say, bind it on your foreheads. "And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." I know this translation is probably not one a lot of you have, but the ideas are the same, right? We are to love, the first part, our first challenge is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and might, with all of our strength, with all that we are to love the Lord our God. That is this idea of being a disciple, this idea of being transformed, of being on mission and knowing Him. And Jesus expands on this in the New Testament whenever he's challenged and asked, what is the greatest commandment? He says, to love the Lord your God. And then he adds on, he doesn't make it easier, he makes it harder. He says, not only are you to love the Lord your God, but you are to love your neighbor as yourself. That is an additional challenge that we have from Jesus later on in the Bible. But it expands on this. It says that is to be in your heart. That is to be the thing that beats. That is to be the thing that keeps you alive, the thing that is constant, the thing that is always existing, is this love for God, love for others. And then we take that thing that is so central to us, that thing that is so shaping and life-giving, and we teach it to those around us. Now, if you are watching this, you're probably a parent or a volunteer with the kids in student ministry, Next Gen ministry. That means you probably have a kid of your own, or you volunteer, or you work with them, or even if you don't and you just are checking out these videos, there's someone in your life that has been put there for you to teach these things to. And so that kind of brings me back to a point that was made in yesterday's sermon that I want to just keep building on. They said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, to make a disciple, you need to show them what it looks like to be a disciple, first of all. You need to have your actions be the actions of a disciple, of someone who is loving God and loving others. But you also need to use your words. And I know I'm much more inclined, naturally, to just want my actions to show who I am. I'm much more happy to go help serve somebody than I am to serve them and then have this conversation about how the reason I'm serving them is because I love Jesus. I'm much more likely to go give something to a person who is homeless I see, just drop a few dollars or give them a couple things and go on my way, let my actions show that I love them, than I am to do that and then to spend time talking with them, to ask them about who they are. And really, whenever we're called to love people, to be disciples, we're called to do both things. And this is the idea of how we can make disciples in our own homes, in our own lives, in the places we go, and the people we interact with. I think for a lot of us, we didn't have both. We were lucky if we had one of those things, right? We were lucky if our family, our parents either lived like Jesus or if they taught us about him. But it was rare in my experience, and maybe you haven't had this, but it was rare for me to see other people who were raised in a place where both of those things were happening. Where your parents would live like Jesus and then they would teach you about him while they were doing it. Or they would teach you about him, but also their actions matched up with their teachings. This is our challenge and our command as disciples, as followers of Jesus, people who know Jesus, remember, people who know Jesus, who are transformed by Jesus, and people who are on mission with Jesus. I want to give you some encouragement in this process. The encouragement that you don't need to have it all figured out. That making a disciple is not about figuring out what it means to follow Jesus and then teaching somebody. What it means to make a disciple is just to bring somebody along on the journey. In the end, it's not you who's making the disciple, right? It's not you who's doing the work, you who is responsible. It is God working through you and God working in them. So our part is just to be faithful and available, to be teachable, to be people who are being examples of what it looks like to follow Jesus to those around us. So those are just some ideas. I just wanted us to reinforce and hammer home what we talked about yesterday on Father's Day, that making disciples happens best at home. That you don't need to have it all figured out, and that one of the best ways to learn to grow in it is to just do it. And I hope that's encouraging. I know it could seem scary, but that's why you have a church family. That's why you have the people around you. That's why you have your small groups. That's why you have your mentors. That's why you have people that are here to support you, to support your family. That's why we're here, is to help you guys make disciples. So I hope you have a good week, and we will see you next time.